مردم شریف ایران، من شهریار افشار هستم، میزبان شما در برنامه Politics 365. دوستان، در این چند ماه اخیر از سپتامبر 2022 تا حالا که اوایل اکتبر 2022 هستش، ما سعادت داشتیم که با چندین نفر صاحب نظر، سیاستمدار، اکتیویست، وکلا از همه جای دنیا صحبت کنیم در این برنامه و تا اونجا که میتونیم نظرهای اون افراد به شما برسونیم و موضوعی رو به اصطلاح دنبالش بریم که به نفع مردم ایران هستش و صدای مردم ایران هستش. با توجه تمام این موضوعی که ما تو این برنامه باش بحث کردیم و شخصیتایی که به این برنامه آمدن، من به این نتیجه خیلی مختصری رسیدم که میخواستم با شما عنوان کنم. دوستان، وقتی به تمام حوادثی که در این سال پیش اتفاق افتاده، از موقعی که مهسا امینی به قتل رسید تا حالا، من میبینم دیاسپورا، ایرانی مقیم خارج، وقتی مثلا به سوشال میدیا توجه میکنن، به همه چی عکس العمل خیلی قوی نشون میدن و یه ذره به اصطلاح فکر کنم گمراه میشن از هدف اصلی که واقعا حمایت از مردم ایرانه و حمایت از این جنبش ملی که هممون یه نقش خیلی ناقابلی توش داریم. اما خب هممون کار زندگی، هر کاری که داریم ول کردیم که بتونیم به مردم ایران کمک کنیم. و منظور من اینه که اگه ما میخوایم انتقام بگیریم از هر کسی که به ما خطایی کرده، اون یه روش کاره. اما اگه ما ایران رو پس میخوایم، اون یه روش دیگه است، یا ایران یا انتقام، اما جفتشو نمیتونیم به دست بگیریم. خلاصه وقتی رو سوشال میدیا و حوادثی میبینید که خواهدن میخواین عکس العمل بهش نشون بدین و به اصطلاح دنبالش بینن، عصبانی میشین، خودتون رو برنجونین، دوستانتون رو برنجونین، ناگفته نماندن که هدف ایرانه و تا اونجا که ما میتونیم باید خودمون رو بتونیم، این جنبش ملی رو بتونیم یه جوری به جهتی برسونیم که به نتیجه برسونه برای مردم ایران. یا ایران یا انتقام، اما جفتش رو نمیتونیم به دست بگیریم. و اگه واقعا ایران رو پس میخوایم، پس باید آماده باشیم یه فداکاریایی بکنیم، دیدگاهمون رو عوض کنیم، فرهنگمون رو عوض کنیم، یه جوری اصلا به این جنبش ملی نگاه کنیم که شاید تا حالا به راحتی نمیتونستیم فکرشو بکنیم. یا ایران یا انتقام. اگه شما نظر متفاوتی دارین، خواهش می‌کنم با من تماس بگیرین در info@politics365.com. خوشحال میشم نظرتون و انتقادتون و راهنماییتون رو به دست بگیرم و تو این برنامه بتونم به توجه شما برسونم. به امید ایران آزاد، من شهریار افشارم. روز خوش. درود به مردم شریف ایران، من شهریار افشار هستم، میزبان شما در برنامه Politics 365. امروز یک مهمان خیلی فعال در زمینه حقوق بشر به برنامه ما پیوسته، خانم مهسا علیمردانی در لندن. ایشون توی ارگانیزیشن به اسم Article 19 فعالیت میکنه و یه ارگانیزیشن هیومن رایتس، حقوق بشر، که ایشون کارشناس دیجیتال لیترسی و دیجیتال اکسس در خاورمیانه، مخصوصا خب ایران. بقیه برنامه به انگلیسی انجام میشه، اما خب من تا اونجا که بتونم شاید به فارسی یک دو تا کلمه لابلای حرفای ایشون ترجمه کنم. قبل از اینکه به مهمانمون برسیم، میخواستم مجددا یادآوری کنم به دوستان که در طرفای لس آنجلس زندگی میکنن، نوامبر 28 دوستامون در Empower Women Media یه برنامه در وست هالیوود سیتی کانسل چمبرز دارن اجرا میکنن. It's a Women Life Freedom Film Festival. اگه فرصت میکنین حتما نوامبر 28 طرفای فکر کنم 6 شب در سیتی کانسل چمبرز یه برنامه رایگان هستش. رجیستر میتونین بکنین آنلاین، میتونین Empower Women Media رو گوگل سرچ بکنین، ارگانیزیشن دوستمون شیرین تابه رو میبینین، میتونین رجیستر کنین. تا اونجا که اگه بتونین شرکت کنین در برنامه خیلی خوشحال میشیم و خودم هم سعی میکنم حتما اونجا خودم رو برسونم و شما رو ببینم. خب بریم دنبال مهمان اصلی امروزمون، خانم مهسا علیمردانی from Article 19. مهسا جان، خوش آمدید به برنامه ما. Thank you so much for making time. We're so happy to learn of what you're doing. and I really wanted to share it with our community because I think it's really important work, digital literacy, internet access, all the different things that go on ordinarily would be a very challenging thing, but you're having to kind of operate under these very difficult circumstances, as you know, in the Middle East and Iran. So I feel like your work is even more important than ever before to make sure our community understands what you do and how they can be helpful and how they can track and participate in the reports and the results that you're getting. So tell us a little bit about yourself, how you kind of came into this role, your background, and then let's explain what Article 19 really is. Thank you so much for joining us.
مرسی برای دعوتتون شهریار جان. من یعنی فارسی حرف میزنم ولی وقتی به موضوع حرفه‌ای صحبت میکنم دوست دارم انگلیسی حرف بزنم که خورده واضح‌تر و روون‌تر بتونم بیان کنم. So I am a senior researcher at Article 19, which is an international human rights organization that tries to defend freedom of expression and access to information all around the world. I am part of the Middle East and North Africa team, and Article 19 stands for, as you might know, the 19th article of ICCPR, which is the International Covenant for Civil and Political Rights. It's also known as the United Nations Human Rights Declaration. It's one of the foundational guiding principles for international human rights law. And so our organization is actually composed of a lot of international human rights lawyers and legal experts that try to apply international human rights law, international human rights standards to different facets of things that impact freedom of expression and access to information. I specialize in digital rights in the context of the MENA or Middle East region. And of course, I am Iranian, and so I specialize in the Iranian internet context. So various things related to digital rights. Of course, as we know, with any sort of protest movement or social movement that has happened within the last 2 decades, really, technology is central to the discussions of protest and mobilization, and in essence, in human rights. And so a lot of the work that we do is trying to see what these cross sections between technology and human rights are, especially in the Iranian context. And I mean, freedom of expression is a very complicated matter, as you might know from various different topics. And freedom of expression with our new, technological realities is also an extremely complex and multifaceted topic. And so there are a lot of things to address, from what freedom of expression looks like on social media platforms, especially for, languages like the Persian language, which, doesn't necessarily come naturally to these companies that have been founded and are based in Silicon Valley. And then, of course, there's the issues of how authoritarian governments or regimes, in the case of the Islamic Republic, are trying to fight against the freedoms and opportunities the internet and various digital tools provides for opposition or dissent, which of course we know is a massive issue because, the Islamic Republic is one of the most sophisticated and advanced regimes when it comes to censorship, surveillance, in the process of internet shutdowns. And so there's a lot going on with digital rights with the Iranian context. And since September 2022, when of course we had the murder of Mahsa Amini, it's been really a full-on year and now, I guess, month of working on this issue nonstop. And I mean, it still continues because the movement, despite it having different manifestations, still continues to this day.
Right. You know, we could talk about this all day long, and I think we still won't touch the surface. But as I'm hearing you, I guess I wonder a couple of things. Freedom of expression has a lot to do with rule of law. You know, in countries like North Korea and Iran, I mean, there's no such thing as rule of law. So you could have a digital literacy and access and expression, but if there's no rule of law, they just make up, like if you say something that seems expressive and natural and normal, like I don't like what the government's doing, I feel like I need to defend political prisoners here, I need to say this, I'm poor, I don't have enough money, whatever you feel you need to express, if they can just make up that is against the Islamic regime and condemn you to 50 years in life or execute you. I mean, this is not unlike, and I would love your opinion on this, North Korea. If you criticize the supreme leader in North Korea, they come get you, your relatives, and anyone you've ever known and intimidate or jail you by various degrees. So how do you see freedom of expression and rule of law in Iran?
Shahriar, this is a very complicated question because and it often leads to us having living abroad and working on human rights and trying to uphold these international human rights standards. You have these existential questions of what are we even doing? The Islamic Republic of Iran is a signatory of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, where Article 19 gets its name, where we try to uphold freedom of expression. So you have all of these systems and standards in place, and yet they provide very little shield against the abuses that this regime continues to commit. And of course, they have their propaganda, they have their various reasonings. I mean, most of the laws that the Islamic Republic has come down to national security and preserving national security. And so it becomes extremely complicated to try to pursue these matters internationally. There has been a lot of progress on these matters. I mean, just pushing concepts of internet shutdowns has been within the past decade. We have gotten UN resolutions that are condemning internet shutdowns. Obviously, it's not enough because the regime continues to put in place internet shutdowns, and other regimes across the world are still doing it. And the situation is getting worse and worse. There are some positive developments. I mean, they're not necessarily directed and aligned directly with digital rights, but within the past year, we had an overwhelming majority of UN member states vote to create the fact-finding mission on Iran. Obviously, this isn't going to stop the abuses from happening, but it does, put a precedent of documentation. And we did see for the first time, countries in Latin America and the global South coming and condemning and voting to have accountability against the Islamic Republic. And so there is some positive developments in that way, because as you know, the Islamic Republic tries to present itself as the savior of the global South and all these non-Western countries, and we have been seeing a tide kind of shifting against them. And they do really care about their international prestige and how the world looks at them, because we do see them come to the UN and put forward lies and different ways to make up for what they're doing. And it is hurting them. I mean, they are suffering economically from the further sanctions that much of the world has. I mean, not much of the world, but we've been seeing from the EU and whatnot. So there are those little bits of impact that we do see, and that we don't stop pushing and hoping and fighting and advocating for this better vision. So to answer your question, it is sometimes you do lose hope when you see that these international mechanisms aren't working, but doesn't mean that we're not going to keep trying.
Right. No, thank you for that. I appreciate everything you're doing, and especially your peers in this global human rights community. I mean, could you touch a little bit on who else is active in your field? I mean, do you work with other human rights groups, and how do you leverage each other's core strengths? Like, you guys are good at something, somebody else is good at something else, you all share notes, compare, and then you move something forward together?
Yeah, we've done a lot of coalition work, and there are a number of coalitions that are working on the human rights agenda. So, I mean, one of the coalitions we're part of at Article 19 is called Impact Iran. And this is a coalition of various human rights organizations that are working on Iran, and it has, I mean, active members, and it has different partners. And so back in November 2022, Impact Iran was very central to advocating and lobbying various states within the Human Rights Council in Geneva, at the United Nations headquarters in Geneva, to vote to create the fact-finding mission, which is going to do a lot of the work of accountability and investigations into the crimes that the Islamic Republic has committed during the Mahsa Amini uprising. And so that was one of the efforts we were part of. Impact Iran and various other human rights activists and organizations did the push to kick off the Islamic Republic off of the CSW at the UN, which was the Committee for Protecting Women. And so this has been the work of, a community of human rights organizations and human rights experts and lawyers coming together to work together to do this kind of global advocacy. And it continues to this day, even in capitals in, South America, Latin America, where you are working with these governments that have typically been, friendly or even allied with the Islamic Republic, to get them to leverage their relationships to change the human rights situation. So this is ongoing work, and there's a lot going on. I mean, right now, the Islamic Republic keeps on getting voted onto various different bodies at the UN, and so our organizations are all mobilizing to try to ensure that they can't use these spaces to whitewash their crimes. So that's a lot of work that we do.
Thank you. No, that's fantastic work that you're doing. I think everyone really appreciates it. And the coalition of Impact Iran, I think everyone should follow and track what Impact Iran is doing and help to the extent possible. So basically, you're saying that the diaspora and all the Iranian community and the human rights activists all around the world working together has had an impact. And to the extent that they've been able to push Iran off of some of these committees, we're not done yet. It's easy to lose hope, as you said. This is a marathon, not a sprint. So, I think everyone in the early years or in the early months of after Mahsa Amini's passing felt the regime's gonna topple any minute, and obviously it didn't happen, because this regime has had 44 years to entrench itself in, as you point out, various international institutions, and waive or intimidate, however which way they lobby various organizations. Maybe oil is a part of it, economic and security issues, whereas the diaspora is coming at it from a human rights and justice standpoint. We don't have the billions in oil or the economic or the security carrots and sticks that Iran waves in front of the international community. But to whatever extent we can document this, we're making a dent. We just got to keep at it. Is there any, in the 3 minutes we have left, I got two questions, really. So do you feel we're at a better point now in holding Iran accountable than a year ago? And what else could we do to have an impact?
Yeah, I mean, I think some incredible things has happened in the past year. I'm based in the UK, but I have seen the American community, for example, mobilize in terms of passing the Mahsa Act, for example. So this has really been an incredible coming together of communities, and I've been seeing it somewhat in the UK as well. And so just this unity of being aligned. I mean, I know there isn't always perfect unity within the diaspora or within the opposition, but like the unity and understanding, okay, we have a common goal, which is to see an Iran with freedoms, with human rights, ideally with the current regime gone. I think has been really great. And if it continues.
Well, thank you so much, Mahsa Alimardani. یک دونه تشکر از زحمتتون، از فعالیتتون. I wish you great success. Thank you.